rang her
You
doorbell
cannot
and said
escape
3
this.
words.
Please let me go.
Rang her doorbell
Your
and
fear
said
is
3 words that
intoxicating.
changed
No!
everything. You're mine now. This is how a heartbroken graphic designer became the most powerful vampire queen in history. The wedding dress hung on the closet door like a ghost. White silk, delicate lace, pristine and perfect and mocking. Elena Rivers sat on the hardwood floor of her apartment, mascara rivers, tracking down her cheeks, staining the collar of her oversized sweater. Her phone lay face down 3 feet away. She couldn't bear to look at it again. Couldn't bear to reread the message that had shattered her world exactly 2 hours and 43 minutes ago. The rain hammered against the windows, each drop a tiny fist, each gust of wind a whisper that sounded too much like failure. 28 years old, 4 years together. A future that had evaporated like morning mist. Her left hand felt naked. The engagement ring still sat there, a white gold band with a modest diamond, but it felt wrong now. Heavy, like a shackle instead of a promise. She twisted it absently, the metal catching the lamplight, and felt her stomach twist with it. The text message had been short, brutal in its efficiency. I can't marry you. You're ordinary. My career needs someone extraordinary. Sorry. Ordinary. The words sat in her chest like a stone. David Morrison, corporate lawyer, rising star at Bennett and Associates, had called her ordinary. After 4 years of her cooking his favorite meals, after 4 years of her attending his work functions, smiling at his colleagues, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, after 4 years of her rearranging her life to fit into his. Ordinary. Elena pulled her knees to her chest. The apartment felt too big, too empty, too full of memories that tasted like ash. The couch where they had watched movies, the kitchen table where she'd planned every detail of the wedding, white roses and peonies, 3-tier cake with buttercream frosting, a small garden venue overlooking the harbor. She'd sent the invitations last week. Her phone buzzed. She didn't reach for it. It would be her mother or her sister in Portland, or one of her friends who'd somehow already heard through the grapevine that the wedding was off. She couldn't face them yet, couldn't face the pity, the concerned voices asking if she was okay. She wasn't okay. Thunder rolled somewhere over the city. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the pieces together, trying to remember how to breathe. The worst part wasn't the heartbreak, it was the humiliation. David hadn't even had the courage to say it to her face. A text message, like she was worth so little that he couldn't spare 30 minutes to end 4 years properly. Ordinary. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to call him and demand an explanation that would actually make sense. But she sat frozen on the floor instead, paralyzed by the weight of her own inadequacy. The apartment was silent except for the rain and her ragged breathing. Then the doorbell rang. Sharp, insistent, nothing like the usual buzz from the building's entrance. Elena's head snapped up. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her friends didn't even know yet. She'd blocked David's number after sending a single response, "Don't contact me again." The doorbell rang again, longer this time, more demanding. Elena pushed herself to her feet. Her legs felt shaky, unsteady. She stumbled toward the door, wiping at her face with the sleeve of her sweater, knowing she looked like a disaster. Red eyes, smeared mascara, hair that hadn't been brushed since this morning. Through the peephole, she saw him, the man from the penthouse, Dante Ashford. Elena's breath caught. In 6 months of living in this building, she'd seen him exactly 4 times. Always from a distance, always moving through the lobby with the kind of presence that made people step aside without realizing they were doing it. He never spoke to anyone, never acknowledged the doorman's greetings, never smiled. He was obscenely wealthy, that much was obvious. The penthouse took up the entire top floor. A private elevator led exclusively to his residence. Black cars with tinted windows sometimes waited for him at odd hours. The other residents whispered about him in the mailroom, spinning theories. Old money, tech mogul, international criminal. And he was beautiful. Not handsome, beautiful. In a way that felt almost wrong, almost dangerous. Well over 6 feet, shoulder-length hair so white it seemed to glow under certain light, though he couldn't be older than 35. A face that looked carved from marble. Aristocratic, sharp, and eyes so pale they looked silver. He stood in her hallway now, perfectly still, wearing all black. Simple clothes that probably cost more than her rent. His white hair fell loose around his shoulders. His face was expressionless. But his eyes locked onto hers through the peephole with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. Elena's hand hesitated on the doorknob. She looked like a disaster. Tear-stained, broken, still wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater from college. But something in the way he stood there, patient as stone, made her fingers turn the lock. The door opened. He was taller than she'd realized. His presence filled the entire hallway, made the space feel smaller, charged, electric, like the air before a lightning strike. Up close, she could see details she'd missed from a distance. The perfect symmetry of his features, the way his skin seemed to glow faintly in the fluorescent light, the absolute absence of movement in his chest. He wasn't breathing. "Can I help you?" Her voice came out hoarse from crying. Dante didn't answer immediately. He simply looked at her. His gaze traveled over her tear-stained face, her trembling hands, the wedding dress visible behind her in the apartment. Something flickered in those silver eyes, something dark and possessive and utterly focused. Then he stepped forward, crossing her threshold without invitation. "Hey, wait," Elena started, but he was already inside, closing the door behind him with a quiet click, moving like smoke, fluid and purposeful, until he stood in the center of her small living room. The space felt different with him in it, smaller, more alive, dangerous. "You're crying," he said. His voice was deep, accented, old-fashioned somehow, cultured, each word precisely formed. Yes, I'm sorry, but who?" Elena's mind raced. This was insane. A stranger, in her apartment. She should call security, should demand he leave, but she didn't. "I know why." Dante turned to face her fully. The force of his attention was almost physical. "The weak fool who lived in your phone, the one who didn't deserve to breathe the same air as you, he's gone." Elena's mouth fell open. "How do you—" "I heard you." His expression didn't change, but something in his voice softened, just a fraction. "I've always heard you, Elena. Your laughter, your music, the sound of your footsteps above my ceiling. I've heard you singing off-key in the shower. I've heard you talking to that stray cat you rescued last month. I've heard you living." He paused. When he spoke again, his tone carried absolute certainty. "And tonight I heard you crying. For him. For someone who threw away a treasure because he was too blind to recognize its worth." Elena should have been frightened, should have demanded he leave, called the police, something. But instead, she found herself rooted to the spot, captivated by this impossible man who'd invaded her apartment like he had every right to be there. "I don't understand," she whispered. Dante took a step closer, then another, until he was close enough that she could see the inhuman perfection of his features, the way his skin seemed too smooth, too flawless, the absolute stillness of his chest. No rise and fall, no breathing. "That weak man didn't know what he had, Dante said. His voice dropped to something almost dangerous. "But I do. I've known for months. I've watched you leave for work every morning at 7:30. I've seen you smile at the doorman, tip the delivery drivers too generously, stop to pet dogs on the street." His hand lifted. One finger traced the air just beside her face, not quite touching, following the curve of her cheek, her jaw. "I've wanted you from the moment I saw you, but you wore his ring. You belonged to someone else." His jaw tightened. A muscle jumped, and I waited. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. This was absolutely insane, and yet she couldn't look away from those silver eyes. "You waited," she repeated, her voice barely audible. "Until tonight, until I heard that door slam, until I heard you crying, alone, discarded by a fool." Dante's eyes blazed suddenly. For just a second, Elena could have sworn they flashed red, like fire, like blood. "No more waiting. No more pretending I don't see you every day and feel like I'm starving." He reached out and caught her left hand. His fingers were cool against her skin, gentle despite the obvious strength in them. With deliberate slowness, he slid the engagement ring off her finger, let it drop to the floor. The small ping of metal hitting hardwood seemed impossibly loud in the silent apartment. "You're mine now," Dante said. It wasn't a question. It was a declaration, a vow, an absolute truth spoken into existence. "If you'll have me." Elena should have said no, should have picked up the ring, should have called security and reported this lunatic who'd broken into her apartment and was saying impossible things with impossible certainty. But she looked into those silver eyes, felt the cool touch of his hand still holding hers, remembered the sound of her own vows echoing off the walls just minutes ago, and she felt something shift inside her chest, something that had been breaking suddenly finding a new center of gravity. "I don't even know you," she whispered, but she didn't pull her hand away. A ghost of a smile touched Dante's lips, the first expression she'd seen on his perfect face. Then let me remedy that. And for the first time in hours, Elena felt something other than pain. She felt alive. The rain continued its assault on the windows as Dante Ashford sat down on her couch like he belonged there. And maybe Elena thought with a strange flutter in her chest he did. Tell me about yourself, she said. The words sounded absurd even as she spoke them. This impossible man who just declared her his. This stranger who somehow felt less estranged than David had after 4 years. She sank into the chair across from him, suddenly aware of how surreal this all was, and not caring at all. Dante leaned back. His white hair spilled over his shoulders. His eyes never left her face. The intensity of his focus should have been uncomfortable, should have made her want to look away. It didn't. I'm very old, Elena Rivers, he said. Much older than I look. That's a weird way to start. You wanted honesty. His smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed just a touch too sharp, too white, too perfect. I'm 158 years old. I was born in 1868 in a place that doesn't exist anymore. To a family whose name has been lost to history. He paused, letting the words settle. And I am the Vampire King. Elena laughed. It bubbled up out of her. Hysterical and genuine. The first laugh she'd managed in hours. The absurdity of it all crashed over her like a wave. Okay, she managed between gasps. So you're crazy. That's actually kind of on brand for tonight. My fiancé dumps me via text and a vampire shows up at my door. Sure, why not? But Dante didn't laugh. He simply watched her, patient as stone, until her laughter faded into uncertainty. You're serious, she said slowly, completely. Prove it. Dante stood in one fluid motion, too fast to be natural. 1 second he was across the room, the next he was directly in front of her chair. She hadn't seen him move, hadn't seen the transition. He was just there, close enough that she could see the faint veins of silver in his irises. Smell something on him like winter frost and old books, something cold and clean and ancient. I could show you many things, he murmured. His voice was low, intimate, each word a caress. I could move so fast your eyes couldn't track me. I could lift your car with one hand. I could compel your mind, make you forget this conversation ever happened, make you do anything I wished. His hand came up, cupped her cheek with surprising gentleness. But I won't, because I don't want an enthralled servant, Elena. I want you, all of you, your mind, your will, your choice. Her heart was racing again, but not from fear, from something else entirely, something hot and dangerous and utterly irrational. This is insane, she breathed. Yes. Vampires aren't real. We are. We've always been real. We're just very good at hiding. And you're their king. I am. Elena closed her eyes, tried to find her equilibrium. The world had tilted sideways. Nothing made sense anymore. David was gone. A vampire was in her apartment. A vampire who'd been watching her, wanting her, waiting for her. I think I'm having a breakdown, she said. This is a breakdown, right? The stress finally broke me. Look at me. Dante's voice carried a note of command that made her eyes snap open automatically. He was still touching her face, his thumb brushing over her cheekbone. The touch was cool, gentle, real. I'm going to tell you something, he said, and I need you to hear it. Really hear it. He waited until she nodded. I have lived for over a century and a half. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have tasted blood on every continent, commanded armies, built fortunes, destroyed my enemies without mercy. His silver eyes held hers, unflinching. I am not a good man, Elena. I'm not even really a man anymore. But from the moment I saw you 6 months ago stepping out of the elevator with coffee stains on your blouse and a smile for the doorman, despite your obvious bad morning, I have been utterly, completely captivated. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but not from sadness this time. She swallowed hard. That's a lot. I know, and I know this is terrible timing. I know you're hurt and raw and vulnerable. Dante's hand dropped from her face. He took a deliberate step back, giving her space. Which is why I'm not going to touch you. I'm not going to kiss you, no matter how much I want to. I'm simply going to make you an offer. What offer? Let me court you. The old-fashioned word sounded strange in the modern apartment. Strange and somehow right. Let me show you who I am. No lies, no games, no pretending to be something I'm not. I'll tell you everything about my world, my nature, my pet, and in return you give me a chance. A real chance. Elena's mind raced. This was crazy, absolutely crazy. Vampires didn't exist. This man was either delusional or pulling some elaborate prank, but his hand had been cold, really cold, and she hadn't seen him move. And God help her, she wanted to say yes. And if I say no, she asked. Pain flashed across his perfect features, there and gone in an instant. Then I'll leave. I'll respect your decision. He paused, something vulnerable creeping into his expression. But I'll never stop wanting you. The apartment felt too small suddenly, too hot. Despite the cool presence of the man in front of her, Elena's heart hammered. Her hands trembled. Every logical bone in her body screamed that this was it one. But she'd just had her heart broken by a man who called her ordinary. She'd just spent 2 hours crying on the floor. She'd just had her future stolen by a coward who couldn't even look her in the eye. And now there was a man, a creature standing in her living room, who looked at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay, fine, court me, whatever that means. She held up a finger. But I reserve the right to call this off at any point, if you turn out to be a serial killer or something. Dante's face transformed. The smile that spread across it was radiant, boyish, completely at odds with his otherworldly appearance. I'm not a serial killer, he said. Then quieter, with an edge of truth underneath, I'm much worse. He was already moving toward the door, that impossible fluid grace making him seem like he was floating. I'll pick you up tomorrow, 7 in the evening. He paused at the door, looking back at her over his shoulder. Dress comfortably. We're going somewhere special. Somewhere you can see the truth of what I am, and decide if you can accept it. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, and Elena was alone again. But this time the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt full of possibility. She looked at the wedding dress hanging on the closet door, looked at the engagement ring lying forgotten on the floor, and she laughed, wild and free and a little bit hysterical. What the hell just happened? She asked the empty room. The rain answered with thunder, and somewhere above her in the penthouse she imagined Dante Ashford standing at his window, looking out at the storm, thinking of her. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. The next day crawled by like molasses in January. Elena called in sick to work, something she never did. Sent a brief text to her supervisor at Morrison Graphics. Family emergency, need personal day. Not entirely a lie. Her entire life felt like an emergency. She spent the morning in a daze, moving through the apartment like a ghost. She picked up the engagement ring from where Dante had dropped it, stared at it for a long moment, then put it in the drawer of her nightstand, out of sight, out of mind. Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from friends who'd heard about the broken engagement through the grapevine. Concerned texts from her mother. Even a few from David's friends awkwardly trying to mediate. She ignored them all. Instead, she Googled vampire mythology. Felt ridiculous doing it. Everything she read was contradictory. Vampires couldn't go in sunlight. Vampires could go in sunlight, but were weakened. Vampires needed permission to enter homes. Vampires could be killed with stakes, with fire, with decapitation, with garlic, with holy water. It was all nonsense, had to be. But she'd seen Dante move, felt his cold skin, looked into those impossible silver eyes. By 6:30, she was a bundle of nerves. She'd changed outfits 4 times before settling on dark jeans, a soft sweater, and boots. Comfortable, like he'd said. She left her hair down, applied minimal makeup, paced her apartment like a caged animal. At exactly 7 o'clock, her doorbell rang. Dante stood in the hallway wearing dark jeans and a charcoal Henley that hugged his muscular frame. His white hair was pulled back in a low ponytail. He looked different, less intimidating, almost normal. If you ignored the supernatural beauty, the predatory stillness, the eyes that seemed to see straight through her. Ready? He asked. His voice was softer tonight, gentler. I think so, Elena said. Where are we going? You'll see. He led her to the private elevator, used a key card she'd never seen before. They rode it not up to the penthouse, but down, deep beneath the parking garage, to levels that shouldn't exist. A sleek black car waited there, engine running. Dante opened the passenger door for her with old-fashioned courtesy. Elena slid inside. The interior smelled like leather and something else, something cold and clean. As they pulled out into the evening traffic, Elena found her voice. So, Vampire King, that's a real thing. Very real. Dante navigated the streets with easy confidence. There are covens all over the world, different territories, different rulers, but they all answer to me, ultimately. That sounds like a lot of politics. It is. Tedious mostly. Vampires are dramatic creatures by nature. Lots of posturing and ancient grudges. He glanced at her, a hint of humor in his eyes. I'd much rather be doing this. Kidnapping confused women. Courting beautiful ones who deserve far better than they've been given. Warmth bloomed in Elena's chest. Unexpected and welcome. You're very sure of yourself. I've had a long time to become confident. They were leaving the city now, heading toward the forested hills that ring the metropolitan area. The sun had set, darkness pressed against the windows. But I'm not confident about this, Dante said quietly. About you. I'm absolutely terrified I'll do something wrong and lose you before I've even really had you. The vulnerability in his voice made Elena turn to look at him fully. In profile illuminated by the dashboard lights, he looked almost human. Almost. Why me? She asked softly. You're gorgeous. You're rich. You're apparently immortal royalty. You could have anyone. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his hands steady on the wheel. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Because you're kind. Because you smile at strangers and tip generously and rescue stray cats. Because I've heard you singing off-key in your shower, and it's the most beautiful sound I've ever heard in 158 years. He paused, swallowed hard. Because when I see you, I don't feel like a monster. I feel like maybe, just maybe, there's still something good left in me worth saving. Elena's throat tightened. She reached across the center console, found his hand, laced her fingers through his. His skin was cool, but his grip was gentle. Dante, she whispered. You don't have to say anything, he said. I just needed you to know. They drove in silence for a while, the city lights fading behind them, replaced by darkness and trees. Eventually, Dante turned onto a narrow road that wound up into the hills, barely more than a track. The car climbed steadily until they emerged into a clearing at the top of a ridge. Dante parked, came around to open her door, led her to the edge of the clearing where the ground dropped away to reveal a breathtaking view. The city spread out below them, lights sparkling like a blanket of stars. The ocean beyond was a dark mirror reflecting the moon. The wind whispered through the trees, cold and clean and carrying the scent of pine. It's beautiful, Elena breathed. Yes, but Dante wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at her. Elena, he said, I brought you here because I need to show you the truth, all of it, and it might frighten you. She turned to face him fully. Her heart was pounding, but she forced herself to stay calm. Okay, she said, show me. Dante took a deep breath. He didn't need to breathe. Habit from his human life, perhaps. And then he changed. It wasn't dramatic. There was no flash of light, no smoke or transformation sequence. But his eyes bled from silver to deep crimson. Glowing in the darkness like coals, his canines lengthened, becoming very obviously fangs, sharp and white and deadly, and the air around him seemed to pulse with power, with ancient, terrible strength. Elena took an involuntary step back. This is what I am, Dante said. His voice carried echoes now, like multiple voices speaking in unison, layered and deep and inhuman. I am death. I am a predator. I have killed thousands over the centuries. Some who deserved it. Some who were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. I have bathed in blood and reveled in it. His glowing eyes held hers, unflinching. I am not human, Elena. I haven't been human for a very long time. He was giving her the truth, ugly and unvarnished, giving her every reason to run, every reason to scream and call the police and never look back. But Elena looked at the glowing red eyes, at the fangs, at the terrifying beauty of the creature before her. And she thought about the gentle way he'd touched her face, the vulnerability in his voice when he'd spoken of being terrified to lose her. Are you going to hurt me? She asked. Her voice was steady, stronger than she felt. Never. The word was absolute, carved in stone, immutable. I would burn the world before I let harm come to you. Do you want to bite me? Drink my blood? Dante's jaw clenched. For a moment, his eyes flared brighter. Yes, God, yes. You smell like heaven, Elena, like sunlight and happiness and everything I've been denied for over a century. He took a shuddering breath. But I won't. Not unless you ask me to. Not unless you want it. Lena took a step toward him, then another. Dante remained perfectly still, watching her approach like he was afraid any movement might spook her. She reached out, placed her hand on his chest, over where his heart should be beating. There was nothing, just cool, still flesh. I should be running, she said conversationally. I should be screaming and calling the police and getting as far away from you as possible. Yes, but I'm not. She looked up into those glowing eyes. Why am I not? Because you're brave, Dante said. His voice was softer now, the echoes fading. Because you see past the monster to what's underneath. His hand came up to cover hers, dwarfing it. Or maybe you're just having that breakdown you mentioned. Elena laughed, the sound startling in the quiet clearing. Oh, definitely a breakdown. This is maximum breakdown territory. She paused, biting her lip. Can I ask you something? Anything. You said you wanted to court me. What does that mean exactly? Because I'm getting some serious old-fashioned vibes from you, and I need to know if I'm about to be chaperoned everywhere and given flowers through a maid or something. The tension broke. Dante's eyes faded back to silver. His fangs retracted, and he laughed. Really laughed, head thrown back, the sound rich and genuine and utterly human. No maids, he managed, though I will bring you flowers. I'm from the 19th century, not the 16th. I know how modern dating works. Do you, though? Elena challenged. Because you're a 158-year-old vampire king. I feel like your reference points might be a little skewed. I've been keeping up, he said, still grinning. I know about dating apps and ghosting and all those terrible things you humans have invented to make romance more complicated. Says the man who literally announced I was his without even asking my name first. I knew your name. I've known it for months. Elena Marie Rivers, apartment 2847, works at Morrison and Associates as a graphic designer. Has a sister in Portland and parents in Florida. Allergic to shellfish. Favorite coffee is a vanilla latte with oat milk. He paused, his smile turning softer. And you sing along to 80s music in the shower with endearing enthusiasm. Elena's mouth fell open. That's kind of stalkerish, Dante. I know. He had the grace to look slightly sheepish. I'm a vampire. We tend toward the obsessive. I've been restraining myself admirably, actually. I could tell you what you had for breakfast 3 weeks ago on Tuesday. Oh my God. I'm trying to be charming. Is it working? Despite herself, Elena smiled. It's working. In a deeply weird, concerning way, it's working. She shook her head. I'm completely insane. This whole thing is insane. Probably, Dante agreed, his expression softened. But it's also real, Elena. What I feel for you, what I want with you, it's the most real thing I've experienced in over a century. The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache. Take me home, she said quietly. Disappointment flickered across his face. There and gone. Of course. They drove back to the city in comfortable silence. The tension from earlier had dissolved, replaced by something warmer, softer. Dante walked her to her apartment door. Ever the gentleman. Stood in the hallway with his hands in his pockets. Thank you, Elena said, for being honest, for showing me. Thank you for not screaming and running. He smiled slightly. Does this mean I get a second date? She considered him, this impossible creature who looked at her like she hung the moon, who'd been patient for 6 months, who'd just revealed his darkest nature and asked for nothing in return. Yes, she said, but next time something normal, like dinner. I don't eat food. Then you can watch me eat food. Very romantic. Dante's smile widened into a grin. Tomorrow. Don't you have king stuff to do? Nothing more important than this. Elena's heart did a little flip. Tomorrow, 7 again. I'll be counting the minutes. He leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away. Pressed a kiss to her forehead. His lips were cool but gentle, and the gesture was so sweet, so chaste, that Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Then he was walking away, heading for the elevator, and she was standing at her door with her hand pressed to her forehead, where she could still feel the ghost of his kiss. Inside her apartment, Elena collapsed on the couch, pulled out her phone, scrolled through the messages from friends, from her mother, from her sister demanding to know if the wedding was really off. She opened a new message to her best friend, typed, "You're not going to believe what just happened," then deleted it. How could she possibly explain it? Instead, she sent, "The wedding's off. I'm okay. Better than okay. I'll call you tomorrow." She tossed the phone aside, pulled a blanket around herself, and smiled at the ceiling like a lunatic. A vampire. She was dating a vampire king who'd been pining for her for months, who looked at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. David who, tomorrow, couldn't come fast enough. The next 3 weeks passed like a dream Elena never wanted to wake from. Dante was true to his word about courting her. He took her to quiet restaurants where he ordered wine he didn't drink and watched her eat with unnerving focus. His silver eyes tracked every movement, every bite, every smile, like he was memorizing her. He brought her flowers. Not roses, never roses. Instead, exotic blooms she couldn't name, night-blooming jasmine that filled her apartment with sweet, heady perfume. Ghost orchids so rare she Googled them and found they cost hundreds of dollars each. Dark purple hellebores that only grew in moonlight. He walked her home every night, never pushed for more than a kiss on her forehead, though she could see the restraint it cost him, the way his jaw would tighten, the way his eyes would flash silver to red and back again, the way his hands would clench at his sides. And he told her stories, stories about growing up in a small village that had been swallowed by a city centuries ago, about the vampire who'd turned him when he was 30 years old, a woman named Morgana who'd seen potential in a dying soldier and granted him eternity, about the long, bloody years of establishing his rule, building his kingdom one territory at a time. He spoke of wars she'd only read about in history books, the Civil War, the World Wars, Vietnam. He'd been there, watched history unfold from the shadows. He spoke of loves and losses, of watching the world change around him while he remained frozen in time, of the loneliness that came with immortality, the way humans flickered in and out of his life like candle flames, brief and beautiful and gone too soon. And Elena, despite every logical bone in her body screaming that this was insane, fell completely and utterly in love with him. It happened gradually, like ice melting in spring. One moment she was cautious, keeping her distance, reminding herself this was crazy. The next she was laughing at one of his dry observations about modern technology, or listening raptly to a story about the French Revolution, or catching herself staring at the way moonlight caught in his white hair and made it glow like silvered fire. She learned that he was fierce with his enemies, but gentle with those he cared for, that he had a sharp, cutting sense of humor that could make her snort laugh wine through her nose, that he read voraciously, owned a library that took up an entire floor of his penthouse, that he listened to classical music, Vivaldi and Mozart, and composers whose names she'd never heard. She learned that despite being a predator, despite the blood and the death and the centuries of darkness, Dante Ashford was fundamentally kind. He donated anonymously to charities. She discovered this by accident when she saw a receipt on his desk. Millions of dollars to organizations that protected vulnerable people, homeless shelters, women's refuges, children's hospitals. He'd created programs to protect humans in his territory. Laws among his kind about consent, about unnecessary killing, about respecting the mortals who shared their world. "I'm not a good man," he told her one night as they sat on her couch, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting on his chest where she could feel the absence of a heartbeat. "But I try to be better than I was. Every day I try." "You're good to me," Elena said softly. "That's easy." His fingers traced patterns on her shoulder. "Being good to you is the simplest thing in the world." On their fourth date, he kissed her properly for the first time. They were standing on her balcony, looking out at the city lights. Elena had made some joke about garlic that had Dante laughing, and then suddenly his hand was cupping her face, his thumb brushing over her lower lip. And he was looking at her with such naked want that her breath caught. "May I?" he asked, his voice rough. "Yes." The kiss was like nothing she'd ever experienced. Cool lips that warmed against hers. Gentle at first, testing, then deeper as she pressed into him. His arms came around her, solid and strong, and she felt small and safe and cherished. There was no urgency, no fumbling, just perfect, focused attention. Like kissing her was the only thing that mattered in the entire world. When they finally broke apart, Dante rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard despite not needing to breathe. "I love you," he said, simple and direct, no hesitation. "I know it's too soon. I know this is all moving too fast. But I love you, Elena Rivers, and I need you to know it." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were good tears, happy tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I don't know how or why, or if this makes any sense, but I do. It doesn't have to make sense." He kissed her again, soft and sweet. "It just has to be true." But not everything was perfect. 4 weeks into their relationship, Dante showed up at her door looking grim, his silver eyes darker than usual, his jaw tight. "We need to talk," he said. Elena's stomach dropped. Those 4 words, the universal harbinger of bad news. She let him in, her mind racing. This was it. the other shoe dropping. He was going to tell her it was a mistake, that she couldn't handle his world, that this was doomed from the start. Instead, Dante took both her hands, looked into her eyes with grave intensity. "If this continues," he said quietly, "if we keep going down this path, I need to introduce you to my world, my court, the vampires who serve under me." He paused, his grip on her hands tightening. "And I need you to understand what that means. They won't all accept you easily. Some will be hostile, some will see you as a weakness, immortal who has no place beside their king." "Why are you telling me this now?" Elena asked. "Because I want this to be real. And real means all of it. Not just the romantic dinners and the flowers, but the politics, the danger, the reality of what I am and what being with me means." Dante's expression was tortured, conflicted. "I'm giving you an out, before it's too late, before you're in too deep." Elena pulled one hand free, cupped his face, felt the cool smoothness of his skin. "I'm already in too deep," she said, "and I don't want an out. I want you, all of you, the good and the complicated and the dangerous." Relief flooded his features, so powerful it was almost painful to witness. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified," Elena admitted, "but I'm sure." The underground vampire court was like nothing Elena could have imagined. Dante took her there on a Friday night, down through the private elevator that descended far below the parking garage, into depths that shouldn't exist beneath the city. The doors opened onto a corridor of polished black stone, lit by lights that seemed to glow from within the walls themselves. Ancient runes carved into the ceiling, beautiful and terrible. "This is my seat of power," Dante explained, his hand warm around hers. "Every city has one, a place where the local vampires gather, where disputes are settled, where the ruler holds court." They walked through the corridor, passing other vampires who bowed their heads to Dante, but stared at Elena with open curiosity, some with hostility, some with hunger. Elena held her head high, refusing to show fear. Even though her heart was racing, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. Finally, they reached massive double doors, carved wood inlaid with silver. Dante pushed them open to reveal a chamber that took Elena's breath away. It looked like something out of a Gothic fairy tale. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, supported by columns carved with intricate designs, creatures and symbols from nightmares. Chandeliers dripping with crystals cast dancing light over a floor of white and black marble, and at the far end on a raised dais sat a throne of dark wood and silver. But it was the vampires filling the chamber that made Elena's blood run cold. There had to be at least 40 of them, all beautiful, all deadly, all watching her with predatory focus. Dante's hand tightened on hers. "My court," he said quietly, "my advisors, my generals, my nobles, the ones who've served me for decades, who helped me rule." He raised his voice, addressing the room. "I've brought someone I want you to meet, Elena Rivers, the woman who has claimed my heart." A tall vampire with dark hair and cruel eyes stepped forward. Male, handsome in a cold, sharp way. "My lord," he said, his voice dripping with disdain, "is this the human, the one you've been entertaining?" Several of the vampires laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Dante's expression went cold, ice and fury. "Marcus Stone, you will show respect, or I'll rip out your tongue and let you spend the next century regrowing it." The laughter died instantly. Marcus bowed his head, but Elena could see the resentment in his eyes. A woman stepped forward, copper hair piled elegantly on her head, regal bearing, beautiful in a timeless way. Her eyes were kind, warm even. "My lord," she said, her voice cultured and calm, "forgive our surprise. A human companion for the Vampire King is unprecedented. We mean no disrespect to Miss Rivers." She turned to Elena, bowed slightly. "I am Serafina Vale. I have served Dante for 70 years. Welcome." Elena found her voice. "Thank you." But another vampire spoke up. Female. Stunning. With midnight black hair and eyes like emeralds. She wore a gown of deep crimson that hugged her curves, and she looked at Elena with barely concealed hatred. "My lord." Her voice was silk and poison. "Surely you understand our concern. A human mate. It's dangerous. Think of the implications. She's fragile, mortal. She could be used against you." Dante's eyes flashed red, just for a second. "Isabella Thorne, Elena is mine. That's the only implication that matters." "But my lord, enough!" Dante's voice cracked like a whip. Power rolled off him in waves that made even Elena's human senses prickle. The air itself seemed to vibrate. I didn't bring her here to debate my choice. I brought her here to introduce her as my chosen companion, the woman who will stand at my side. You will accept this, or you will leave my territory. Those are your options." The silence was deafening. The vampires exchanged glances, some shocked, some angry, a few intrigued. Finally, Serafina stepped forward and knelt. "My king," she said, "if this is your wish, then we honor it. Welcome, Lady Elena." Others followed suit, kneeling, though Elena could feel the resistance in many of them. This wasn't acceptance, it was obedience, forced by Dante's power and authority. But it was enough, for now. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of learning and adjustment. Elena attended Vampire Society events, learned the intricate politics, the alliances and feuds that stretched back centuries, the delicate balance of power between covens. Dante taught her self-defense. Not that it would do much good against vampires, but he insisted, showed her how to fight, how to use her smaller size to her advantage, how to think tactically. "The threats won't just be supernatural," he explained as they sparred in his private gym. "Humans can be just as dangerous, and I need to know you can protect yourself when I'm not there." Their romance deepened, slow and sweet and inevitable. He still didn't push for more than kissing, still gave her space, still asked permission for everything. "I've waited 158 years, he told her. "I can wait as long as you need." But Elena was falling deeper every day, drowning in him, in the way he looked at her, the way he listened when she talked about her day, the way he remembered every small detail she mentioned. Serafina became an unexpected ally, a mentor of sorts. She took Elena aside at gatherings, explained the nuances of vampire culture, warned her about which nobles to trust and which to avoid. "Isabella is trouble," Serafina said one evening. "She's been in love with Dante for decades. Hoped he would choose her. Your presence, it's a wound to her pride." "Should I be worried?" "Be cautious. Isabella is cunning, and jealousy makes vampires dangerous." But Elena had bigger things to worry about, like the charity gala. 6 weeks into their relationship, Dante had been invited to the Rothschild Foundation Gala, a major event in the city's social calendar. Billionaires and celebrities in old money, black tie, $5,000 plates. He'd attended for years, donated generously, maintained his reputation as a reclusive philanthropist. This year, he asked Elena to be his date. "I want to show you off," he said with a smile. "Let the world see the woman who captured the uncapturable bachelor." Elena was nervous. This was high society, way out of her league. But Dante hired a stylist, had a gown custom-made for her, midnight blue silk that hugged her curves and made her feel like royalty, diamonds at her throat and wrists, borrowed, she was sure, worth more than her yearly salary. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. "You look like a queen," Dante said when he came to pick her up. He wore a tailored tuxedo, his white hair loose around his shoulders, devastatingly handsome, and he looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. The gala was held at the Belmont Hotel. The grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes. A string quartet played Vivaldi. Waiters circulated with hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Elena's rent. Dante kept her close, his hand on the small of her back, introducing her to mayors and senators and tech moguls. She smiled and made small talk and tried not to feel like an imposter. And then she saw him, David, standing near the bar, wearing a tuxedo that didn't fit quite right, talking to a woman in a red dress who looked bored. He looked the same, handsome in a conventional way, brown hair styled perfectly, clean-shaven, corporate smile, ordinary. The word he'd used to describe her now seemed to fit him perfectly. Their eyes met across the room. David's face went pale, then red. His gaze traveled from Elena to Dante and back again. Shock and recognition and something that might have been regret. He started walking toward them. "Elena," he said, his voice too loud, drawing attention. "Elena, I need to talk to you." Dante's hand tightened on her waist. His expression went cold. "Dangerous." "You need to leave," Dante said, each word precise, glacial. "I'm talking to my fiancé," David said. "Ex-fiancé," Elena corrected, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You ended that via text message. Remember, people were starting to stare, conversations dying, heads turning." David's face flushed darker. "Elena, baby, I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I was stressed. The promotion, the pressure. I didn't mean it." He reached for her hand. Dante moved, faster than human eyes could track. One moment he was beside Elena, the next he was between them. His hand wrapped around David's wrist, stopping him cold. Don't, Dante said softly. But there was nothing soft about his tone. It was a promise, a threat, pure predatory menace. David tried to pull away, couldn't. Dante's grip was iron. She's mine now, Dante said. Still quiet, still deadly. She was never yours. You threw her away, called her ordinary, discarded her like trash. His silver eyes flashed red for just a fraction of a second. So fast only Elena saw it. Touch her again and you'll regret it for whatever brief time you have left on this earth. He released David's wrist. David stumbled back, cradling his arm, looking around at the crowd that had gathered, at the phones that had appeared. Recording. Elena stepped forward, drew herself up, met David's eyes directly. You called me ordinary, she said, her voice clear and strong, carrying across the ballroom. You said your career needed someone extraordinary, someone worthy of your ambitions. She gestured to Dante, to the most eligible bachelor in the city, the man worth billions, the man who commanded rooms with his presence. Dante sees me as extraordinary. He chose me. He values me. He loves me. She paused. Let the words sink in. I choose him, not you. Never you again. The silence was absolute. Every eye in the ballroom was on them. On David, humiliated and exposed, warring across his features. You're warring across his features. You'll regret this, he said, but his voice was weak, defeated. The only thing I regret, Elena said, is wasting 4 years on someone who never saw my worth. David turned and fled, pushing through the crowd, leaving the gala, leaving his date, leaving his dignity in shreds on the marble floor. The ballroom erupted in whispers, shocked murmurs. A few people even applauded. Dante pulled Elena close, kissed the top of her head. You were magnificent, he murmured, and Elena smiled, because David Morrison had just gotten exactly what he deserved. Public humiliation, public rejection, justice served cold. But justice had a price. 2 weeks later, Elena attended her first vampire banquet. It was held in the underground court, a formal affair celebrating the autumn equinox. An ancient tradition, Dante explained. Vampires from across his territory attended, dressed in finery, drinking wine laced with blood, dancing to music that sounded medieval and modern at once. Elena wore a gown Dante had commissioned for her, deep green velvet, off the shoulder. She felt beautiful, powerful, like she belonged. Isabella was there, wearing crimson, staring at Elena with undisguised hatred. But Elena ignored her, focused on Dante, on the way he introduced her to visiting nobles, on the way he kept her close, protected. Serafina was there too, smiling, approving. You handled David beautifully, she said. The entire vampire community heard about it. You're earning respect. Midway through the evening, a toast was called. Goblets of wine were distributed, deep red, almost black. Elena's had no blood in it, just wine. Dante had been clear. She wouldn't be expected to drink blood unless she chose to become one of them. To our king, Marcus Stone called out, and his companion. The disdain in his voice was palpable, but he raised his glass. Everyone raised their glasses. Elena lifted hers, smiled at Dante, and drank. The wine was good, rich and complex. She took another sip and felt her throat start to burn. Not burn, sear, like swallowing acid, like drinking fire. The goblet fell from her hand, shattered on the marble floor. Red wine spreading like blood. Elena clutched at her throat, gasping. The pain was spreading through her chest, her stomach, every nerve ending screaming. She collapsed. Dante caught her, his face transforming from calm to absolute terror in a heartbeat. Elena! His voice was a roar, inhuman, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. He cradled her in his arms, his hands shaking, his eyes blazing red. What's happening to her? He demanded. Serafina was there, kneeling, her face grave. She touched Elena's forehead, pulled her hand back like she'd been burned. Silver, she said. There's silver in her blood. Someone poisoned her. The court erupted, vampires shouting, accusing. Dante's rage was palpable, a physical force that made the chandeliers shake. Who? He thundered. Elena could barely see, could barely breathe. The pain was overwhelming, consuming. She was dying, she knew it, could feel her body shutting down. Systems failing. Isabella, someone shouted. Elena's vision was fading, but she saw Isabella, saw the vampire woman backing toward the door, saw the guilt on her face. Isabella stammered. She doesn't belong here. She's making you weak. I had to. You tried to kill her. Dante's voice was beyond rage, beyond fury. It was death itself. But Elena couldn't focus on that. She was slipping, darkness creeping in at the edges, her body convulsing, blood seeping from her nose, her ears. Dante, Serafina said urgently, there's only one way to save her. The venom. Vampire venom purges all toxins. It's the only antidote to silver poisoning. No, Dante's voice broke. I won't force this on her. I won't. Then she dies. Serafina's voice was gentle but firm. In minutes, she dies. Elena tried to speak, but her throat was closed. She reached up, touched Dante's face, tried to tell him with her eyes what she couldn't say with words. Do it. I choose you. I choose forever. Elena, Dante whispered, tears, actual tears streaming down his face. I can't. Not like this. Not without your consent. She forced her hand to move, to his wrist, pulled weakly, toward her throat. Please, understanding dawned in his eyes, horror and hope and terrible, desperate love. Are you sure? He asked. Once I do this, there's no going back. You'll change, forever. She nodded, barely, but enough. Dante looked up at Serafina. Get everyone out, now, and bring Isabella to the throne room. She doesn't leave this building alive. Then he looked back down at Elena, his face twisted with anguish. I love you, he said. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. His eyes bled to crimson, his fangs extended, long and sharp and deadly. And he struck. Pain, fire, agony beyond anything Elena had ever imagined. Dante's venom flooded her system, battling the silver, purging the poison, rewriting her very DNA. She screamed, or tried to. No sound came out. Just silent, endless screaming. Her body convulsed, bones breaking and reforming, muscles tearing and rebuilding. Every cell dying and being reborn. The transformation took 3 days. 3 days of fever and pain and moments where Elena was certain she was dying. But Dante never left her side. He held her through the worst of it, cooling her burning skin with damp cloths, whispering words of love and comfort, telling her stories to distract her from the agony. He fed her his blood when she needed it, gave her strength from his own vein. And in the delirium and the fever dreams, Elena saw things. She saw Dante's past. 158 years of memories flooding into her consciousness. She saw him as a human, a soldier dying on a battlefield. Saw Morgana the vampire who'd turned him. Saw the long, lonely years, the wars, the bloodshed, the endless crushing solitude. She saw him watching her for the first time. 6 months ago, stepping out of the elevator, coffee stains on her blouse, tired but smiling at the doorman, and she felt his heart, his dead still heart, stir for the first time in over a century. She saw his loneliness, his hope, his fear that he would lose her before he ever really had her, and she loved him even more. On the morning of the 4th day, the pain stopped. Elena opened her eyes. Everything was different, sharper, clearer. She could see individual dust motes floating in the air, could hear Dante's breathing 3 rooms away, could smell the cotton of the sheets beneath her, the faint scent of old books from the library down the hall, the copper tang of blood. She sat up. The movement was so fast, so fluid that she actually gasped. She looked down at her hands, turned them over. They looked the same, but they felt different, stronger, powerful. Dante appeared in the doorway, and Elena's breath caught. She'd thought he was beautiful before, but now, with her vampire senses, he was breathtaking. She could see things she'd never noticed. The play of muscle beneath his skin, the way his eyes held depths of silver she'd never perceived, the aura of power that surrounded him like a cloak. How do you feel? He asked softly. His voice was different too, layered, rich. She could hear harmonics in it, frequencies human ears couldn't detect. Incredible, Elena whispered. She stood, testing her new body. Everything felt right, perfect, like she'd been walking around in a fog her whole life and had finally stepped into clarity. Dante crossed to her, took her hands. His touch was no longer cool. They were the same temperature now, matched. Welcome to immortality, my love, he said. She pulled him into a kiss, and this time it was different, equal, matched strength for strength. No more fragility, no more human vulnerability. When they broke apart, Elena's eyes were glowing silver. What about Isabella? She asked. Dante's expression darkened. She's in the throne room, under guard, waiting for judgment. I want to be there. Elena, I want to be there, she repeated, stronger. She tried to kill me. I have a right to see justice done. Dante studied her face, then nodded slowly. Then let's go deliver it. The throne room was silent as a tomb. Elena walked beside Dante through the massive double doors, her hand in his, her head held high. Every vampire in the court turned to stare, some with shock, some with awe, a few with fear. She was one of them now. Her transformation had changed her, not just internally, externally too. Her features were sharper, more defined. Her skin had taken on that same flawless, luminous quality all vampires possessed. Her eyes glowed silver when her emotions ran high, and she moved with the fluid grace of a predator. But it was more than physical. There was power in her now, coiled and waiting. She could feel it humming beneath her skin, strength beyond anything she'd imagined, speed that made the world seem to move in slow motion when she needed it to. Isabella Thorne knelt in the center of the room. Chains of pure silver bound her wrists and ankles, not enough to kill, but enough to burn, to weaken. She looked diminished somehow. Her midnight black hair hung lank around her face. Her emerald eyes were wide with fear. The crimson gown she'd worn to the banquet was torn and stained. 40 vampires lined the walls. Witnesses, the entire court. Serafina stood near the throne, her expression grave. Marcus Stone was there too, looking uncomfortable. Even he seemed disturbed by what Isabella had done. Dante led Elena to the throne, but he didn't sit. Instead, he stood beside it, one hand on the dark wood, the other still holding Elena's. Isabella Thorne, he said. His voice was cold, each word a blade. The fury from 3 days ago had crystallized into something harder, more terrifying, absolute judgment. You stand accused of attempted murder, of poisoning my mate, of betraying your oath to me, your king. How do you answer? Isabella's head snapped up. Tears streaked her face, but Elena felt no sympathy, only the memory of fire in her veins, of dying, of the agony of transformation forced upon her by this woman's jealousy. My lord, Isabella's voice broke. I didn't mean for it to go so far. I just wanted her gone. Wanted her to leave, to give you back to us. To me. You poisoned her with silver, Dante said flatly. Enough to kill a human in minutes. You meant exactly for it to go that far. He released Elena's hand, stepped down from the dais, circled Isabella like a shark, his white hair catching the light, his presence overwhelming. You were jealous. You wanted her dead. Say it. Isabella sobbed, but under the weight of Dante's power, under the compulsion of a king, she couldn't lie. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I wanted her dead. I've loved you for 70 years. 70 years of service, of loyalty, and you chose her, a human, someone weak, mortal, unworthy. Her voice rose, became shrill with desperation. I've stood beside you through wars, through political upheaval, through everything, and you gave your heart to her in weeks. It should have been me. The throne room was silent, every vampire motionless. Waiting, Dante stopped in front of Isabella, looked down at her with something that might have been pity, might have been contempt. Elena survived, he said quietly. She endured transformation. She became one of us, not because she wanted power, not because she sought immortality, but because I bid her to save her life, and she accepted it, chose it, even in agony. He crouched down, met Isabella's eyes. You're right. You've served me for 70 years, and in one moment of jealousy, you threw it all away. You tried to murder the woman I love, the woman who is now my queen. Isabella's eyes widened. Queen, Dante confirmed. He stood, looked at Elena, extended his hand. Elena took it, let him guide her to the throne. She sat. The dark wood and silver felt right beneath her, like it had been waiting for her. Dante stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Elena Rivers is now Elena Ashford, my mate, my queen, and you, Isabella Thorne, will answer for your crime. He turned to address the court. The law is clear. Attempted murder of the king's mate is punishable by death. Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. Isabella let out a wail, collapsed forward against her chains, begging, Please, my lord, please, I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Please don't kill me. Elena watched her, this beautiful ancient creature reduced to pleading. She should have felt satisfaction, vindication, but instead she felt something unexpected. Pity. Dante, she said softly. Every eye in the room turned to her. The newly made vampire. The human-turned queen. Speaking for the first time in this seat of power. May I say something? Surprise flickered across Dante's face. Then pride. He nodded. Of course. Elena stood, descended the steps of the dais, approached Isabella. The vampiress looked up at her, fear and hatred warring in her emerald eyes. You tried to kill me, Elena said, her voice clear, strong. You poisoned me, forced me into a transformation I wasn't ready for, made me endure 3 days of agony. Isabella flinched. But you failed. I survived. I'm here and you're there. Elena paused. Let the contrast sink in. The law says you should die, and part of me wants that. Wants to watch you pay for what you did. But I'm not going to ask for your death. Shock rippled through the court. Dante's hand tightened on the throne's arm. But he stayed silent, letting her speak. Killing you would be easy, Elena continued. But it wouldn't prove anything. It wouldn't show that we're better than our worst impulses. That we can choose mercy over vengeance. She looked at Dante, at her mate, her king. Strip her of her titles, her wealth, her position. Banish her from all vampire territories. Let her live with what she's done. Let her wander alone, forever. That's a worse punishment than death. The throne room erupted in whispers, arguments. Some vampires nodded, others looked outraged. But Dante's face was radiant with love and pride. The queen has spoken, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. And I agree with her judgment. Isabella Thorne, by my authority as vampire king, you are hereby stripped of all titles and privileges. Your wealth is forfeit, your lands redistributed. You are banished from North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, and Australia, all territories under my dominion. He leaned forward, his eyes blazing red. If you are found within any of my lands after sunset tomorrow, you will be executed on sight. You will wander, alone, stateless, for eternity. This is my mercy, the only mercy you will receive. Isabella screamed, a sound of pure anguish. Guards stepped forward, unchained her, dragged her toward the doors. She fought, clawing, shrieking. You'll regret this, both of you. She'll be your downfall. She's weak, she's nothing. The door slammed shut, cutting off her cries. Silence fell. Then Serafina stepped forward. She knelt before the throne, before Elena. My queen, she said, you showed wisdom, compassion. You are worthy of the crown. One by one, the other vampires knelt. Marcus Stone, the nobles, the generals, all of them, acknowledging their new queen. Elena looked at Dante. He smiled, took her hand, kissed it. Welcome to forever, he whispered. 3 months later, Elena stood in front of a mirror in Dante's penthouse. Their penthouse now. She barely recognized herself. The woman in the reflection wore a gown of midnight blue silk, custom-made, fitted to every curve, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that resembled constellations. A crown of silver and sapphires rested on her dark hair. Not heavy, delicate, but unmistakably regal. She looked like a queen. Nervous? Serafina asked. The older vampire stood behind her, adjusting the crown, smoothing the gown's train. She'd become a friend, a mentor, almost like the mother Elena's own mother could never be. Not now, not when Elena's family believed she'd moved to Europe for work. It was easier that way, kinder. Terrified, Elena admitted. Don't be. You've already faced down the court, judged a traitor, earned their respect. This is just making it official. Just a vampire wedding ceremony with 200 immortals watching, Elena said dryly. No pressure, Serafina laughed. You'll be magnificent. The wedding was held in the underground court. The throne room had been transformed. Thousands of candles cast flickering light over the marble floor. White roses and night-blooming jasmine hung from the columns. The scent was intoxicating. Overwhelming. 200 vampires filled the chamber. Representatives from across Dante's territory, some from neutral lands, all dressed in their finest, all here to witness the impossible. A vampire king marrying a human-turned vampire. A love match, not a political alliance. It was unprecedented. Elena walked down the aisle alone. She'd insisted on it. Her human family wasn't here, couldn't be here. So she walked herself, head high, shoulders back, every eye on her. And at the end of the aisle, Dante waited. He wore all black, a tailored suit that fit him like a second skin. His white hair was loose, flowing over his shoulders, His silver eyes glowed with emotion, with love so powerful it took her breath away. When she reached him, he took her hands, and she felt complete. Serafina officiated, standing before them in robes of deep purple, her voice carrying across the chamber. We gather tonight to witness the union of Dante Ashford, Vampire King of North America, and Elena Ashford, his chosen mate and queen. A bond forged not in politics or power, but in love. She looked at them both. Do you, Dante, take Elena as your mate, to stand beside you for all eternity, to rule with you, to share in your triumphs and your burdens? I do, Dante said, his voice steady. Absolute. Do you, Elena, take Dante as your mate, to stand beside him for all eternity, to rule with him, to share in his triumphs and his burdens? Elena met his eyes, those beautiful, impossible silver eyes. I do. Then speak your vows. Dante went first, his hands holding hers. Elena, you were broken when I found you, discarded, called ordinary by a fool who couldn't see your light. But I saw it, from the first moment. I saw your kindness, your strength, your beautiful heart. His voice wavered slightly. You didn't choose this life. I forced it on you to save you. And every day I wonder if you resent me for it. But you stood before the court and showed them mercy. You became a queen in truth, not just in title. He lifted her hands, kissed them. I vow to love you, honor you, stand beside you, for all of eternity. You are my heart, my hope, my reason for existing. After 158 years of emptiness, tears streamed down Elena's face, blood-tinged, the only tears vampires could cry. Dante, she said, her voice breaking, you saw me when I was invisible. You chose me when others discarded me. You gave me forever when I thought I had nothing left. She squeezed his hands. I vow to love you, stand with you, rule beside you. For all of eternity, you are mine, and I am yours. Forever starts now. Serafina smiled, raised her hands. By the authority granted to me by the laws of our kind, I pronounce you mated, king and queen, bound for eternity. She looked at Dante. You may kiss your queen. Dante pulled Elena into his arms, kissed her with everything he had, a century and a half of loneliness, 3 months of courtship, a love that had survived poison and transformation and doubt. The court erupted in applause. Cheers, celebration. And Elena felt something settle in her chest, something that had been broken on that rainy night when David's text message had shattered her world. Wholeness. The news of the wedding spread through the human world like wildfire. Dante Ashford, reclusive billionaire, philanthropist, mystery man, had married, and not to some heiress or celebrity, to Elena Rivers, graphic designer, nobody special. The headlines were everywhere. Mysterious billionaire Dante Ashford marries local designer, from Heartbreak to Happily Ever After the Elena Rivers story, Ashford's surprise wedding. Who is Elena Rivers? Elena's phone, her old human phone that she'd kept for sentimental reasons, exploded with messages. Friends, former co-workers, her sister, her mother, all congratulating her, all shocked. She smiled at each message, responded to a few, savored the vindication. Because somewhere out there, she knew David Morrison was seeing those headlines, seeing her face beside Dante's in society pages, seeing everything he'd thrown away. And that was justice enough. 6 months after the wedding, Elena woke up feeling wrong, not sick. Vampires didn't get sick, but off, different. Her body felt strange, heavy. She was exhausted despite having slept all day. Vampires didn't need much sleep, but she'd slept 12 hours and still felt drained. Dante noticed immediately. What's wrong? He asked, his hand on her forehead, checking for fever even though vampires didn't get fevers. I don't know, I just feel weird. Weird how? Tired, hungry, but not for blood, just hungry. Dante's eyes widened. Elena, when was your last cycle? Vampire women didn't menstruate. Their bodies were frozen in the state they'd been turned, so for Elena's cycle to return meant something impossible. I don't know, I haven't had one since the transformation. Realization dawned on both their faces at the same moment. No, Elena whispered, that's not possible. But Dante was already moving, calling for Serafina, summoning a vampire physician, ancient, experienced. Dr. Lucian Gray had been a doctor for 500 years, had delivered exactly 3 vampire babies in all that time. He examined Elena carefully, drew blood, ran tests with equipment that looked medieval and modern at once, and confirmed the impossible. "You're pregnant," he said, approximately 6 weeks along. Elena's world tilted. Dante caught her, his face cycling through shock, joy, terror, wonder. "How?" Elena asked. "I thought vampires can barely— Vampire pregnancies are extremely rare," Dr. Gray said. "But when a newly turned vampire mates with an ancient one, when the love between them is powerful enough, sometimes life finds a way." He smiled. "Congratulations, both of you." Dante looked at Elena, tears streaming down his face, blood tears, the only kind vampires could cry. "A child," he whispered. "Our child. After 158 years of emptiness. After 158 years of death and darkness and loneliness. A family." Lena was crying too, laughing and crying at once. "We're having a baby." The pregnancy was unlike anything documented in recent vampire history. Elena carried for only 5 months instead of 9. The growth was rapid, almost alarming. Her belly swelled, her body changed. She glowed with an inner light that had nothing to do with vampire luminescence. The court was thrilled. An heir, a child of 2 vampires. Born of love, it was unprecedented, hopeful, a sign that their kind could evolve beyond blood and darkness. Dante was insufferable in the best way. He hovered constantly, anticipated her every need, growled at anyone who came too close. He built a nursery that looked like something from a fairy tale. Soft colors, magical murals of forests and stars, the most advanced security system money could buy. "You know the baby won't even use this room for months, right?" Elena teased, watching him adjust the mobile all over the crib for the 10th time. "I want it to be perfect." "It's already perfect. You're perfect." Dante turned, crossed to her, placed his hands on her swollen belly, felt their daughter kick. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "I've ruled territories, led armies, survived wars, but I'm terrified of being a father, of doing it wrong." Elena cupped his face. "You'll be perfect, because you already love her. That's all that matters." Their daughter was born on a cool autumn evening. The labor was mercifully short, only 3 hours, attended by Dr. Gray and Serafina. Dante held Elena's hand through every contraction, every push, looking like he might faint despite being an immortal king. And then she was there, their daughter, perfect, tiny, with Elena's dark hair and Dante's silver eyes, crying strong and healthy, already showing signs of supernatural strength when she gripped the doctor's finger. "Aurora," Elena whispered, holding her daughter for the first time. "Her name is Aurora." Dante held his daughter with shaking hands, staring down at her tiny face with absolute awe. "She's perfect," he breathed. "She's absolutely perfect." Aurora had her mother's warmth, her father's power. She was both and neither, something new, something unprecedented. And when the sun rose the next morning, when light streamed through the window, everyone in the room froze, because Aurora didn't burn. The sunlight touched her skin, and instead of searing, instead of destroying, she glowed. Soft, golden, beautiful, like she was made of light itself. The first vampire in 3,000 years unharmed by daylight. Serafina gasped. Dr. Gray dropped his instruments. Dante and Elena stared. "It's impossible," Dr. Gray whispered. She's a miracle." "She's hope," Serafina said softly. "A new era, born from love instead of darkness." And Aurora, oblivious to the magnitude of what she represented, yawned and fell asleep in her father's arms. 2 years later, the garden was bathed in the afternoon sunlight, warm, golden, beautiful. Flowers bloomed in riot of color. Roses and jasmine and species that shouldn't grow together but did anyway. Aurora toddled across the grass, 2 years old, already showing signs of the power she'd inherit. She was fast, preternaturally smart, and she could walk in daylight, play in sunshine, something her parents couldn't do, so they watched from the shade of the covered patio. Dante and Elena, king and queen, husband and wife, parents. Elena had never imagined this. When she'd sat crying on her apartment floor wedding dress, mocking her, heart shattered. She'd never imagined that heartbreak would lead here, to this garden, this family, this life. "They said I was ordinary," she said softly, watching Aurora chase a butterfly. Dante pulled her closer, kissed the top of her head. "You were never ordinary. You were waiting for extraordinary." Elena smiled, leaned into him, felt his arm around her. Solid, sure, forever. "Do you ever regret it?" Dante asked. "Giving up your human life, your family daylight?" Elena thought about it, really thought about it. Her human family believed she'd moved to Europe. She sent them emails, gifts. They talked on video calls carefully scheduled for evening hours. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. No, she said. I don't regret it, not for a second. She looked up at him, at her mate, her king, the man who'd seen her worth when others saw nothing. I'm not the broken girl on the floor anymore. I'm a vampire queen, a mother, a wife, and I'm exactly where I belong. Aurora squealed, ran toward them, threw herself into Elena's arms, her little hands dirty from playing in the garden, her silver eyes bright with joy. Mama, look, she held up a flower. A rose, but where her fingers touched the stem, it had bloomed brighter, fuller, like her touch brought life instead of death. Elena and Dante exchanged a look. Wonder, pride, a little bit of fear for what their daughter might become, but mostly love, because Aurora was their miracle, born from heartbreak and transformation and a love that defied death itself. Serafina appeared on the patio, carrying a tray of blood for the adults and juice for Aurora. She'd embraced her role as godmother with enthusiasm, spoiled Aurora shamelessly, and loved her like her own. She touched the rose bush, Serafina observed, and now the whole thing is blooming, even the parts that should be dormant. She creates life, Elena said softly, instead of taking it. She's the future, Serafina replied. Everything our kind could become, if we choose love over darkness. They sat together in the shade, watching Aurora play. The sun climbed higher, the garden grew warmer. Elena leaned into Dante, felt his arm around her, solid, sure, forever. Aurora ran back to them, climbed into Dante's lap. He held her carefully, reverently. Elena took a photo with her phone. Father and daughter, vampire king and miracle child, both glowing in different ways. This would be her life now, forever. Literally, she would watch Aurora grow, would rule beside Dante, would face challenges and triumphs, would live through centuries, and she would never not, for one moment, regret the heartbreak that led her here. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing. Sometimes being called ordinary pushes you to become extraordinary. Sometimes the ending is really just the beginning. Aurora touched her mother's hand, and where their fingers met a soft golden glow spread. Warm, loving, pure. Love you, Mama. I love you too, sweetheart. Dante kissed Elena's temple, and I love both of you, for all of eternity. The sun set slowly, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The garden smelled of jasmine and roses. Aurora's laughter echoed through the evening air. And in that moment, Elena Rivers Ashford felt something she'd never felt before. Complete. Whole. Home. She squeezed her daughter close, kissed her husband, smiled at her friend. They had called her ordinary, but she had become extraordinary. And her story was only just beginning.